Don't get me started with Kwame Brown. I'm not going to do that.
Dropped. Another air ball in the lane. A layup, an air ball layup.
Kwame Brown is regarded as one of the biggest busts in NBA history. As the number 1 overall pick in 2001, Brown started his career under the microscope of Michael Jordan in Washington. Through unfortunate circumstances both in the league and in his life prior, there's much more to Kwame Brown than meets the bust label. Let's dive into his story and see what you think about the big man's truth at the end. What's up, everybody? You're tuned into Mad Hoops, bringing you the hottest NBA content on YouTube. Let's get right into it. Born in Charleston, North Carolina, Kwame started his life in a rough part of town with an even more turbulent family life. His father was Willie Brown, an addict of both alcohol and narcotics that would frequently physically abuse Kwame's mother and other siblings. Later on, as a teenager, Kwame would see his dad get sent to prison for life after murdering his girlfriend. After that, Brown's mother decided to take her kids and restart their lives in Brunswick, Georgia. But the restart would be increasingly difficult as the family tried to acclimate. In an interview on the Pivot podcast, Kwame describes his first few years in Brunswick as being constantly bullied. They didn't have the South Georgia dialect that the other kids in school had. He describes multiple times his older brothers getting in trouble for fighting when they decided that they finally got sick of the harassment. And that wasn't the only time Kwame had to witness his older siblings get persecuted. The family lived in extreme poverty in both Charleston and Brunswick. They were surrounded in their neighborhoods by drugs and violence. Eventually, Kwame's 2 older brothers got intertwined with that world in order to make some extra money. He'd see one serve jail time for selling drugs and the other for an armed robbery. In those days, Kwame was looking for a way out. He watched the older men in his life he was meant to learn from make terrible mistakes that he knew were wrong. He became the man of the house at the young age of 14. He took up a concrete job to help his mom pay the bills and focused on school to make sure his grades weren't lacking. Kwame the kid had to try his best to be a man way earlier than anyone should need. The true passion Brown had to release all his frustration and get to be simply another kid was sports. He started playing both football and basketball through middle school and showed success in both. He loved the physicality of football and being able to smash into the opponent's offenses. But then during the summer heading into 9th grade, Kwame had an unbelievable growth spurt and walked into high school at 6'8". Football was great, but the basketball world had a whole different viewpoint now. Almost immediately, Brown showed promise as an elite inside presence and was recruited by the University of Florida and head coach Billy Donovan by the 10th grade. That was his ticket. If he was signing a letter of intent to play D1 hoops at the same time he was trying to get his driver's license, he knew he could use basketball to get his family a better life. By his senior year, Kwame was a McDonald's All-American and the number 1 high school player in the country after averaging a ridiculous 20 points, 13 rebounds, 6 blocks, and 2 steals a game. Everything seemed locked and loaded to make his presence felt in the college basketball scene. But back then, the one-and-done rule was not a thing yet. Players could declare for the NBA draft immediately after they graduated high school, and so the number 1 ranked high schooler in the country got visited by his NBA idol. Michael Jordan was the executive of the Washington Wizards in the early 2000s. The Wizards were a struggling franchise that was all but assured a top lottery pick. MJ looked at the top recruits of the 2001 class and saw multiple big men. Pau Gasol, Tyson Chandler, and Eddie Curry were frontrunners for the top pick, but Jordan liked the upside of a 19-year-old that flashed an impressive combo of strength and quickness for someone at 6'11". He talked to Kwame before he was due to head to the University of Florida and explained how if he were to declare for the draft, he'd use his pick on him. Brown went and talked to his head coach Billy Donovan about the dilemma. Donovan warned that although the opportunity was there, he didn't think he was ready physically or mentally for the pros. He wanted Kwame to take a step back and come to college to refine both his game and his mind. But we have to remember where Brown came from. Living in extreme poverty is exhausting. So if someone is willing to give you that golden ticket to change your entire family's life, you have to take it. He declared for the draft and was selected first overall, a label that would turn into a double-edged sword. Just how MJ turned into one. The NBA legend was someone Kwame always looked up to growing up. So when Jordan did the unthinkable and unretired and joined the roster while also staying as the executive, it should have been a dream come true. But it was actually a nightmare. The team immediately went from rebuilding mode with the number 1 pick to we are now trying to find a way to contend because we have Michael Jordan. There's nothing more Jordan hates than losing. And unfortunately, this roster was constructed for just that. It also meant for a young kid coming straight from high school, he was expected to immediately contribute as the number 1 pick. There have been other high school NBA stars like Garnett, Kobe, and Tracy McGrady, but they were allowed to grow and make mistakes. They were still kids, and the franchises respected that. But not for Kwame. Jordan pulled out his vocab sheets from his Bulls days and constantly berated the young center, trying to get him up to speed. But instead, all it did was crush a young player's confidence. Kwame would have 4 seasons in Washington, averaging 7.7 points and 5.5 rebounds. After that, he'd be traded to the Lakers and spend time with the other insanely intense shooting guard, Kobe Bryant. He put up similar numbers in LA with a team that was starting to accept him as filling a smaller role than his draft number suggests he should have. All the while through these years, a media firestorm has been blazing. Kwame Brown has not just underwhelmed the masses, he's pissed them off.
Not Rasho Nesterovich, and certainly not Kwame Brown.
Because you're Kwame Brown. You came in without the ability to rebound, to pass, to rebound, to defend.
Roy Hibbert looks worse than Kwame Brown.
That's
And
a
I can't
mouthful.
believe
They questioned his effort, his love for the game, and his small hands. Seriously, that was a big contention on Kwame, that his hands were too small, and so he had a hard time catching it in the paint. Brown recalls these moments as causing him to turn inward. He's always been a big teddy bear extrovert, but the hate all around him made him shut off. He wasn't ready for the NBA. And then, even when he got there, he received everything but the ideal training grounds for a 19-year-old rookie. Then he got sent to another team with an NBA legend that demanded perfection. That wasn't in him yet. From 14-year-old concrete worker to 19-year-old bust, Kwame turned to ways to cope.
He was a fucking drunk, man. Fucking drunk. That's what Kwame Brown was.
Wait, he was drinking?
To be clear, you can't point all the fingers away from Kwame himself. He did do the actions that got him in these situations, and it was possible to find healthier ways to cope or ask for help. But there's an argument to be made that no one is built to walk through this kind of media swarm.
They gave up Kwame Brown. Who
first
cares?
round.
The city of angels, Hollywood, just should be celebrated. This man was a bona fide scrub.
After that Lakers trade, the journeyman life was the one for Kwame. He'd play for 5 different teams in 6 seasons and then retire at the age of 31 after battling frequent injuries. He'd finish with a 12-year career average of 6.6 points and 5.5 rebounds. He walked away with contract earnings of $64 million as well. Although that is far below the kind of money most number 1 picks make, it was still plenty to end the days of struggle for his family. So as for the term bust, it's up for discussion. Should he have been either a much lower pick or spent some time in college? Absolutely. Was he a young kid that was dealt a rough hand in life and then got handed a golden ticket with some rough context in the fine print? Definitely. And since those days of massive media hate, Kwame has spoken out about his side of the story and even fired back at people like Stephen A. and Gilbert Arenas. But even in the year 2022, they can't resist bringing up old memories.